if there's a chance that message comes back on tonight about restarting, just hit the postpone.
We're gonna do it tomorrow or something.
We did it already. I came down.
I think you have to shut off.
You shouldn't have to. If it bothers you, you can just move it to the side like this one. Or you can click on the postpone button and then it just disappears.
Even though you already
It may, it shouldn't, but I just want to give you a heads up.
So just click on it, it'll move it over.
Just, you know how when you click to move something, oh, you can't see your mouse here.
Right.
You just click it and then just drag it and let go.
Okay, so click and drag.
Click and drag. Yep.
Yes, sir. It's going. Good.
I've been up and I've been down, seen the rain fall all around. Dark days when nothing seemed quite right, but something about them days with you always make the sky so blue, always seem to make the world so bright. 'Cause it's magic when we're together, sun shining on the weather. Magic when I am here with you, and I'm floating like a feather, smiling, what could be better? Life is magic being here with you. Ooh. Life is magic when I'm here with you.
Good evening. Welcome to the Chandler City Council study session of Monday, May 7th, 2018. I want to welcome everybody to the study session. First item is scheduled public appearances. We have a couple proclamation. I would like to ask Council Member Nora Ellen to please join me out front of the dais. Oh, I'm sorry. She's the Vice Mayor. Just when I'm going to get used to that name, you'll probably leave.
For joining me out front. The Vice Mayor and myself have to do a couple proclamations. First proclamation is Municipal Clerks Week. I'd like to call up members of the City Clerks Division. We will read a proclamation, and then we will ask Dana DeLong, our City Clerk, to introduce her staff, and then she can say a few. Nora, I'm going to let you read the proclamation, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and all our wonderful City Clerk Office staff people. Whereas the Office of the Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the Office of the Municipal Clerk is the oldest position among public servants and provides a professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at all levels, and whereas the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, and whereas the Chandler City Clerk's Office provides a vast array of informational and professional services to the residents of Chandler, acts as the official record keeper of our city, and performs election work with the utmost integrity and professionalism. Now, therefore, I, J. Tibbs Rainey, Mayor of the City of Chandler, Arizona, hereby proclaim May 6th to 12th as Municipal Clerks Week. The witness of everybody here and a seal on here from the infamous mayor. A little ad lib there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our wonderful clerk of the court of the City of Chandler.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you. For this proclamation, I'd like to introduce you to your clerk staff. We have Erica Barbara, Nan Cow, Jessica Sweet, Julia Ruiz, and Jennifer Pena. And this is your, I have to say, standing before you is one of the finest group of clerk professionals I've ever had an opportunity to work with. And I'm very proud of them. So I want to thank you for your continued support of the clerk's office, and thank you all for your hard work.
Vice Mayor, I want you to give them that proclamation. You don't get to keep it. Let's do a photo. Thank you, City Clerk's Office. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Okay. Thank you, clerks. Proclamation, Building Safety Month. I would like to call up members of the city's building division as well as Chandler Fire Marshal Sina Sunderhouse. I'm going to read the proclamation and then ask Ron Boos to say a few words. Okay, thanks for being with us today. Okay, proclamation. Whereas the City of Chandler is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and economic value of the homes, buildings, and infrastructure that serve our citizens both in everyday life and in times of natural disaster. And whereas our confidence in the structural integrity of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineer builders, trade people, design professionals, laborers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown guardians of public safety, our local and state code officials, who assure us of safe, efficient, and livable buildings. And whereas building codes save lives, the theme for Building Safety Month 2018 encourages all Americans to raise awareness of the importance of building safe and resilient construction, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, and new technologies in the construction industry. And now, therefore, I, Jay Tiptree, Mayor of the City of Chandler, Arizona, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2018 as Building Safety Month in the great city of Chandler.
Building regulation in the United States began in the late 1800s when major cities began to adopt and enforce building codes in response to large fires in densely populated cities, as Chicago and San Francisco. The primary intent of early building codes was to reduce fire risk, but over time their scope has broadened. Today, building codes address structural integrity, fire resistance, safe exiting, energy conservation, healthy interior environments, and accessibility for people with disabilities. Building Safety Month was established to acknowledge the many people who contribute to the overall safeties of structures in our buildings. Building designers, plans examiners, contractors, and inspectors all play an important role in the construction of a safe building. And when we all do our jobs right, what goes up does not come down, at least not unexpectedly.
Don't leave, we're going to do a photo. Okay, Vice Mayor Allen. Seems like we're miles apart here. Okay, next item, National Economic Development Week. Call up members of the Economic Development staff, along with members of our Economic Development Advisory Board. So please come forward. I'll have Nora read the proclamation, and then we'll ask Micah to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas 2018 is being recognized as the 92nd anniversary of the International Economic Development Council's Year of the Economic Developer, and whereas the International Economic Development Council is the largest professional economic development organization dedicated to serving economic developers while providing training opportunities, advisory services, and research, and whereas Chandler's economic development staff promotes economic well-being and quality of life for our city by creating, retaining, and expanding high-quality jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base. And whereas Chandler's economic development staff also stimulate and incubate entrepreneurialism in order to help establish the next generation of new businesses while continuing to assist existing businesses as needed. And whereas elected officials, city staff, members of the Economic Development Advisory Board, and the business community all work to promote economic development efforts in the city of Chandler. Now, therefore, I, Jay Tiptree, Mayor of the City of Chandler, do hereby proclaim May 7 to 12, 2018 as National Economic Development Week. Congratulations. Good job, everybody.
So, quick introductions. We have Mike, we have Julie, we have Ryan with Economic Development staff, Terry, Dave Moss with the mall, Cecilia with Landings, Terry with the Chamber, and Bill with Quadmark. They all play an important role within economic development, but one of the most important things is economic development is a team sport, and everybody who works for the city, lives in the city, and visits the city all has an important role in advancing the economic vitality of our community. So with that, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Micah. Thank you and your staff and our commission for the work you do. We appreciate it. We'll take a photo now.
Everybody say Dodgers.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is the consent agenda. We'll be voting on the consent agenda on Thursday, and then council, we do have a special meeting on Thursday after the regular meeting to talk about budget amendments and what have you. Tonight, I know there's Councilmember Ellen Ann Rowe have wanted to do a little discussion on item 13, so I will go to Councilmember Ellen on item 13, which is the Air Park Area Plan Amendment. Vice Mayor, I'm sorry. I figure if I call you Vice Mayor enough, I'll get used to it.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Eric. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the Airport Commission and what their decision was when they voted on this development amendment.
Certainly, through the mayor, Vice Mayor Ellen. This item, along with all other items in the Air Park Area Plan, go to the Airport Commission for their review, evaluation, and feedback. I think I see why you're asking that question. Oh, here it is. I thought I admitted it accidentally. They had the meeting on March 14th, and as typical with it, there's always a concern when you're adding more roofs to the Air Park Area Plan and around the airport. However, this instance was a little bit different. As part of the request, there's also an area plan amendment, and it is taking the density for the area and reducing it. And so one component of the site, the western half, is high density residential, which allows up to 18 dwelling units per acre. And then the eastern half is medium density residential, which has a density height of 12 units per acre. What the request is to take it down to low to medium density residential. And so while the Airport Commission still expressed concerns with adding more rooftops to the area, they understood that the area plan has long designated as residential, but on top of that, that they were reducing the density. And so some of the things that they look at and what we routinely include is the disclosure statements that we will have in the CCNRs, some of the design elements of the subdivision. And so some of the things that we've been looking at lately is the entry monumentation, the name of the development. And so you'll see with a name like Horizon and some of their entry monumentation, it really tries to play on the airport theming so that any future homeowner knows that, hey, look, I'm entering into a special area. In addition to that, there's some signage that we have included, which is low-flying aircraft signage, and that will be throughout the development. So that, partnered with all the disclosure statements, is usually something that the airport agrees with and likes to see have included. And so that was really the step in making some mitigating efforts to make sure that all future residents were aware that, hey, look, we are in the Air Park Area Plan. And so with that, they did express concern, but we were able to mitigate those concerns.
Okay, so they did not say this was a conflict then?
Vice Mayor, they, in my experience for the time that I've been here, anytime that there's residential, there's always been a conflict. However, with this case, what they do is they will say that we have a conflict. However, we have these mitigating elements that they can include, and that's what we've done, is included those. And so while there is still that conflict, we've tried to address their concerns as much as possible, and one of those benefits is the reduction of the density.
Mayor.
Thank you, Eric. Okay.
Councilmember Rowe and then Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few questions about this particular development. I see a fair amount of parking in the property for on-street parking, but some of the streets seem fairly narrow. Is the HOA going to allow people to park on the streets? Is that and is that going to be a problem for our fire department and that sort of thing as far as them responding into those areas?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rowe, we certainly take a long look at the on-street parking and street design. This site is a private street development, and so it's a gated community. But regardless of that, they still have to go through our standards and meet our roadway widths and parking standards. And so if you flip to Exhibit W, it's parking and trash location plan in the development booklet, it will show you where there is on-street parking throughout the development. And so while they are private streets, we still want to make sure that there's the ability for guests to come. And so as we look at development like this, we work with the design team to make sure that they have allocated guest spaces, as well as things that we look at our driveways and garages to make sure that there's sufficient parking for guests. So
the HOA is going to be not concerning itself with people parking on the streets in this community.
Correct. It will be allowed.
It will be permitted.
Yep.
And then the other question, the Vice Mayor kind of hit upon it about the airport, but my concern is that this particular area has so much density already, and even reducing the density on this property is, we are bringing in so many homes to that intersection, and to be candid, people are starting to really push back and say, why are we having so much density? So what are your thoughts?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rowe, it's a good question and a good statement. And we have, in the planning division, we've heard from a number of residents expressing concern with multifamily particularly. And as we walk them through the process and kind of the growth of the city, we tend to highlight that, look, this is part of a larger area plan that has allocated and designated these areas for multifamily. And there's some real benefit to having the multifamily there. And so the things that we look at are like tumbleweed and bringing in users to utilize the park. We also have the close proximity to the freeway system, and then the employers that are in the north part of the air park, as well as Price Road. And so when you look for development in the broader community, it's really beneficial to put the higher density closer to the freeway system and employment corridors, which is really what the council did when they looked at the air park area plan. And so what we have found with concerns from the neighbors is that it seems like all the multifamily has gone up at one point in time, and it all got approved at one point in time. And so what we try to do is walk through the residents, what the zoning process is, the area plan process, and how development occurs, that these properties have long been established for multifamily, and that with a hiccup in the economy, things got slowed down, and now that things are rebounding, we're going to see more construction. When it comes to this particular property, we did have the routine notification process in the neighborhood meetings. And quite honestly, a lot of people did not reach out to us and express concerns from a density standpoint, along the lines more that, hey, what's going on over there? Oh, it's single family, great. And so we kind of get a mixed bag of responses from the community. But I think it's appropriate to really share that as the air park area plan comes to fruition, we will still get those calls about too many apartments. And it's just a process of walking through residents what the long-term plan is for the area. And by and large, by the time we're done, they understand it a little bit more, and the concerns are a little less concerning, I guess. And so from our standpoint, we're looking at it from a long-range capacity. And while all at once it looks like a lot is going up, it is something that's long been planned for. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your response. I'm very concerned about whether we planned it 10 years or 15 years ago. This is just a tremendous amount of homes in that particular area. And I think planning is about spreading that kind of property out through the community so that it has minimal impact. And that intersection, that northbound intersection on Germain at McQueen is, that's insane at the end of the day and in the morning. So anyway, that's my That's my, thank you.
Eric, we're taking high-density residential here that they have already received by right, zoning right. They can build high-density residential. They've elected to bring in lower density residential. Is that true?
Mr. Mayor, that's absolutely correct. And so of the 36 acres, or roughly 40 acres, the western half, adjacent to McQueen, allows for 18 units per acre. The eastern half allows for 12, and ultimately they're going to reduce that, and their cap is going to be overall less than 7. And so they are really taking a step back from what they could do by right. Granted, there's still the zoning process of rezoning it in the PDP process, but the area plan designates it for high density.
My point is, yes, thank you for clarifying that. They're entitled to build what they already have approved. They have private property rights to do that. They are reducing that density in this case, which I would think if I was advocating on behalf of the airport, that would be a positive because I'm getting less residential, because you don't have the choice of just saying you can't build residential there, because then I think you're going to get into a 107 or a 207, whatever they have at the legislature about taking away some of these private property rights. So you have to be careful on that because they have, by right, the opportunity to build the denser project, and they could. And we're building a denser project across the street from there. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I serve at the pleasure of the mayor on the airport commission, and this was definitely a conversation that came up literally about the amount of growth that's going on around the airport as it relates to the general plan for the airport area. And so just as common knowledge, most of us already know, the more homes that we put near the airport, the more likely it is to, and what commission has said is to kill the airport. And that could happen and it could not happen depending on which direction that we go. I'm just sharing that for informational purposes only. I am excited about the builder of this and the fact that now I had a question. Was this originally planned to be industrial, or has it always been planned, always been ag in the general plan? Was it originally industrial and now it's moved to?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, it's always been planned, as far as I can recall, as neighborhoods, sorry. And then it was the Air Park Area Plan that established it as high-density residential and medium-density residential. So as far as I'm aware, historically, we've never had an industrial and employment type designation.
Okay. In your experience, and I'm just not sure, would we find more traffic with an industrial area or high density? Obviously, high density, we're going to have more traffic than with low density. But if it were industrial, is there more traffic for industrial or less than for residential?
Councilmember Stewart, just on my limited knowledge, it really depends on the type of non-residential use. I believe it was the last council meeting, we discussed the Brighton Place development, and there's concerns about residents with too much traffic. And really what it comes down to is when you get office and commercial retail, and even industrial to an extent, you're going to get a different kind of traffic, and you can get more traffic than residential. Again, it depends on the type of residential that you're comparing it to. So it's not an exact apples to apples type comparison, but you're going to get traffic with both. Depending on the type of non-residential use it is, you have the potential to get a lot more.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that case? Okay, well, we'll talk about that a little bit more on Thursday, I'm sure. Any other comments on any other items? Yes, Councilmember Hartke.
Just because that since I read our packet, I do see additional information on item number 10. I just would like to ask staff a couple questions related to this.
Yes, Jody Novak is making her way to the podium.
Good evening.
Hi, Jody. I suspect we might have some people that show up on Thursday, depending on where their passions lie. But in the letter that was on our days, that's currently on the piece after I read our packet, certainly there seems to be some concerns. So I just wanted to ask you, related to the zoning of this particular site, and noise. It seems like, let me go for zoning first. This isn't C3 zoning, correct?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Harkey, that is correct. The property right now is zoned PAD. It allows neighborhood commercial, which are uses permitted by right in the C-1 district. That is the only zoning this property currently has. The request is to keep the C1 zoning that is in place and simply just add one land use, which is motor vehicle repairs. And coming out of Planning Commission, there was a zoning condition added that would limit that added use only to the parcel on the northern end of Gilbert Road where the discount tire is proposed. So there is no C2 and there is no C3 and there's no light industrial proposed for this site.
Good. So some of the other concerns, obviously, that the staff and the applicant had reduced the area from 5.2 to 1.2, and the other is still to be determined. The concerns about an adult business, marijuana stores, other noisy vehicle repairs, possibly going in there. That is at least mentioned in the letters, and I understand potentially in the material that people had signed. Can you address any of those fears?
Yes, through the mayor, Councilmember Harkey. As I mentioned, the property is going to be limited to the neighborhood commercial C1 uses currently in place. If council were to act to approve the addition of the motor vehicle repair, as condition would only be in that one location. There are 3 retail pads on the site. The motor vehicle repair would only occur on one. So you have the 2 remaining pads. The reason I say there's a number of pads because there's also a preliminary development plan that had already been previously approved several years ago for a commercial center. So it included the self-storage and then three retail type pads. So uses permitted by right in C1 could go on those properties. This request is not including any proposal for medical marijuana facilities or any for adult shops. In terms of the zoning, our zoning code is pretty restrictive when it comes to adult stores, which we call SOB, sexual oriented businesses. Those are not permitted by right in our city. They do require coming through a public hearing process for that consideration. Then medical marijuana, I don't have information today to let you know whether one would qualify or not qualify for that location. I don't believe it would. Based on our standards of residential and the proximity to it, I don't think that's a property that falls within our mapping to be able to have that, but that's another separate permitting process that would have to be considered. But those are not a part of the applicant's request to go on this property.
So really our decision is just based on the 1.2 acres that is pretty firmly zoned, and other concerns that are at least present in this have nothing to do with this particular case then, is that correct?
That would be correct.
And in terms of the concerns of noise, with obviously I think this individual noise is a somewhat tricky thing of how it goes through, but in terms of the storage and other attenuating walls and direction of bays and doors, are we pretty convinced that the noise is not going to splash out, so to say, into the community directly behind there?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Harkey, to the best of our knowledge, we have reviewed their acoustic noise study, which was based off of another facility that exists within Chandler, and we have familiarity with other cases that might have similar types of uses and whether they would be noisy or not noisy. We don't have a precedence from community feedback, contacting planning staff or other city departments in regards to noise from automotive vehicle repair facilities when there happens to be one somewhere near homes. This building is being positioned in a location that is equal to or greater than how we locate a lot of other facilities. We typically don't locate them right up against residential property lines. It is separated by another use, which is the storage facility that is there. In terms of our codes, we don't have specifics in our city code about noise related to an automotive vehicle repair or a tire shop. But based on the study that we reviewed, to the best of our ability, the ambient noise and the noise that would come through that wouldn't be anything greater than a lot of other noise that could come from other retail type uses in that area.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just really wanted to get the city's thought on the specific concerns raised and if there was any merit. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Jody. Okay, council, we'll be meeting again on Thursday to review these cases and also do our budget amendments. With that, meeting adjourned.